companions in Avowed work a little bit different than the way they've worked in the previous Pillars of Eternity games that Obsidian has produced, and I'm okay with that. I'm looking forward to it actually because in this game, rather than the companions being optional party members that you sort of can switch in and out as you desire based on their unique lore and romance options, in Avowed, all of the companions are necessary for story completion, meaning at some point you are going to have to take these companions with you to complete the story, which I think is a lot of fun. It makes us more aware and conscious of what the decisions of these characters are, and I think it leads to more lasting relationships. There's also fewer companions in Avowed compared to previous Pillars of Eternity games, where we've had, half a dozen or more in some cases. In Avowed, we're only going to have a total of 4 companions, at least that we've been made aware of so far, leading up to the date that this is being recorded. We've got Giada, who is a ocean human wizard who comes from the Valian Republics. We've got Kai, who is a fighter from Rauatai. He's a coastal Alma. And we've got Marius, who's a ranger. He's a mountain dwarf from the Pergunan region. And then we have Yatzli, who is the one we've seen the most of in the footage that's been released to date, who is a Hearth Orlean wizard. And she is from the region that we're going to, which is the Living Lands. So it's a little bit different than the way they've done it before. And I kind of want to dive into everything we know so far about Avowed's companions. So first and foremost is the fact that the companions in Pillars of Eternity can't leave your party. They won't leave your party for you making the wrong choices. And that's something that is a little bit different than what we've seen with previous CRPGs and even in Obsidian games, where the explanation being given by Kerry Patel and others behind the game development of Avowed is that it's not about maintaining their approval, it's about getting to know them. And they don't want to penalize you for making quote unquote wrong decisions. And that's a little bit different from the way RPG standards have approached companion characters and stories in the past. But Kerry Patel basically sat down and said that you're going to be meeting, your characters in Avowed throughout gameplay, which we've seen before. That's the normal way you'll do it. You'll be adventuring along. You'll find the companions out and about doing different things. You'll help them. They will then join your party. They are then going to be hanging out in a party camp. And that's something for those of you who might have played most recently, like Baldur's Gate 3. You're going to be familiar with that party camp system. We don't know exactly how it's going to be working. We have been told that the party camp serves as a narrative hub as well as the upgrade hub. So I'm assuming you're going to be able to make upgrade decisions at the camp as well as have all of your important narrative decisions happening at the camp with your party members. Of course, the banter happening between those party members will happen just as it has in previous Pillars of Eternity games. When you're out adventuring, the party will be having banter independent of you based upon who's in your party. And in a switch from the first 2 games, in the first game you could have a total of 6 people in your party, so 5 companions and your main character. And in the second game, you had a total of 5, meaning your character and 4 others. In Avowed, it's going to be you and 2 companions. So at any point in time, you're going to be able to bring 2 of the companions with you. And there are going to be some cases where you're going to need to bring along a specific companion because their knowledge or their expertise or they have some sort of a relation to an NPC you're going to be talking to. There's going to be some reason why you have to bring them along, but for the most part, you will be able to pick who comes with you at any given time. So if you have a preference for one, companion over another, you'll be able to pick the ones you want to go with. And also, if you're going to be romancing specific partners in the game, you'll be able to bring those with you more often than not. But there will be some specific instances that are related to the main storyline where you're going to need to bring those along specifically. Now, in terms of managing the party members, it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to micromanage them as you would in previous Pillars of Eternity games. In this game, you're going to be giving them some basic orders during combat, but it's not like in previous Pillars where you could pause the game and specifically select one of your party members and send them out so that they could disarm the trap or that they could have a conversation with this person or that they could be the one to attack first and draw draw the mobs back to camp. That's not going to happen. And unlike the first 2 games, this time around there's no approval system. But the conversations you're going to be having will definitely influence your companions and their decisions and their stories. But it's less about that micromanagement of the party and going to be more like that of, say, the Mass Effect games, or when Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas. Definitely going to be receiving help in combat from the NPCs, but you're not going to be micromanaging and controlling them directly and pausing and selecting them to go about and do things. The way it's been explained so far is that they have moment-to-moment gameplay combat abilities, and then outside of combat, they have some environmental interaction abilities, so you can kind of order them to do some specific things in combat and out of combat. But game director Kerry Patel said, we don't want players feeling like they have to micromanage their party. You want the player to know that the abilities are there and that they're useful, but they don't want you to have to be pulling up the pause menu and feeling like you have to move them around every 30 seconds, which was something that definitely had to be done if you were playing on the, you know, uh, higher difficulty levels in Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. Not so much if you're playing on easy mode, because you could just kind of set the characters to their default AI and they would run around and do things kind of independent of you. But if you were playing on harder difficulties in Iron Man mode and stuff, you definitely had to, yeah, micromanage them. Patel has also said that each companion is going to have a personal story arc, and they're going to be involved in the entirety of the playthrough. So it's not going to be like Baldur's Gate 3, where you can walk around and ignore certain party members, such as like with Gale, where if you don't want to deal with him needing books, and consuming magical items, you could just sort of ignore him at the camp. Or if you choose to completely ignore the hand in the portal at the very beginning of the game, you might not even have Gale in your party at all during your playthrough. So there's different ways they're going to be going about it in Avowed. So Patel has said some of the characters you'll be able to recruit a little earlier, some of them a little bit later, but at some point they're all going to be joining your party along the way through the game, which specifically has allowed them to weave the companions of Avowed directly into the events, conversations, and the action that's taking place throughout the game, as opposed to perhaps not even having people in your party, which is something really interesting. Now, the Baldur's Gate 3 camp was very interesting in the way they did it in that game. Knowing that we have a camp system in Avowed means that players who are familiar with that are going to sort of understand how that takes place in terms of having your heart-to-heart conversations in the camp setting and being able to have more of those narrative experiences in the camp as opposed to in the field, when it's mostly going to be about the banter that's going to be happening between the party members and then based upon specific things that happen along the way. There's also going to be romance options in the game, which people have seen in other one. But it's not necessarily going to be the deep romance that you're going to see, say, like with Dragon Age the Veilguard, where they're going to have pansexual characters, or Baldur's Gate 3, where you had deep romances. Obsidian has had romance options in the past, but if you've never played Obsidian games, the romances are never as deep as they are in certain other games. It's certainly an area where they've put a little bit of effort, but not a ton of effort. Patel has said that you're definitely going to have quest-based interactions with the companions, and they're each going to have their own personal arc. So, as with all Obsidian games, you're going to be talking to the characters and influencing them through a particular course, and shaping how their particular story works, and seeing how their personal challenges are affected with the specific characters that you're going to be playing with. But what they really want to get away from is having this idea that you have to choose the right options in order to keep the companions in your party. So we know that companions won't leave your party like they do in other games. But as far as building relationships with them and finding specific romance options, that's something we don't specifically know how deep the romance is going to be yet. And I know that's something that a lot of people have asked about, and we'll possibly get more information as we get closer to launch. But as of where we are right now, it's mostly just going to be, as far as we understand it, an approval system where you are building relationships with the characters based on those decisions that you make along the way. But we don't know specifically how the romance is going to work. Now, when it comes to the quest-based interactions with companions, it's understood that they each have their own individual reasons for joining you, and the banter that they're going to be having between each other is related to the decisions that you've made along the way and the way that they're reacting to the interactions with the world around you, because there are factions at play here. There's your faction, there's their racial backgrounds, and the decisions that they've made or the factions they've chose to align themselves with. So we do know that the companion system is going to be a lot of fun. We do know that you're going to be adventuring with all the characters, and we do know that it's going to be a fun ride because Obsidian has traditionally made really fun games. We've had a lot of fun with the banter in the past. The narration has always been good. The voice acting has always been good, and it looks like everything that we've seen so far from Avowed is pointing in the right direction. So that's everything we know so far, folks, about the companions in Avowed. Of course, as we get closer to launch date and they release more information, I'll be talking about it more here on the channel. And we will, of course, be doing a completionist run of this game when it comes out here on YouTube and, of course, over on Twitch. So don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon here, follow along over there. Don't forget the Discord, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Stay safe and happy gaming.